Hi everyone, Arundhati here, and welcome to episode 82 of the Let's Talk Yoga podcast. Before we get into today's conversation, I wanted to quickly take a moment here just to remind you that my Teaching Yoga to Beginners course is now live. I have moved the dates to June, and I would love for you to come and explore this training and really take a deep look at how to teach yoga to beginners effectively. Okay, again, all those details are at mindfulyogateachers.com/beginners YTT. That's mindfulyogateachers.com/beginners YTT. On the show today, I have Ismat Dhala Natani, who is the founder of the Center for Ayurveda and Indian Systems of Healing. She has been doing this since 2002 with the intention of bringing the ancient wisdom of Ayurveda to Western communities. She's developed educational programs, materials, and teaching tools that blend the timeless knowledge of yoga and Ayurveda with the current concepts of health and well-being. And most importantly, one of her missions is to make Ayurveda accessible and relevant to modern day, and she lives in Canada, so modern day Canadians. Okay? Ismat's commitment to natural medicine has spanned almost 3 decades and across 3 continents. She shares a little bit of her story and how she got to doing what she does on the podcast. She's a health practitioner. She's an academician, an international speaker, healer, researcher, and practitioner of Nadi Vigyan, which is the ancient art and science of the nerves. I'm very happy that she came on the podcast to talk about what we call the Marma Nadi, okay, and essentially Marma Chikitsa, and she calls it a bridge between yoga and Ayurveda and how it is about the pranic body and deals with the pranic body. I will let her give you more clarity in today's conversation. We do get into the nadis, we get into the importance of these nadis and how they should function well, and why Ayurveda and yoga are significant to each other, and just so much more. If you are interested in exploring a little more about the nadis, the Marma Nadis, the various Marma points in the body, then listen in. As always, I will see you on the other side. Enjoy this conversation with Ismat Dhala Natani. Hi, my name is Arundhati, and you're listening to the Let's Talk Yoga podcast. I'm an ex-Bollywood dancer turned yoga and wellness educator. I've built a 6-figure business as an immigrant, woman of color yoga teacher with no business background, no handstands, pure instinct, and the free information found on Google. If you love doing yoga and you dream of teaching it someday, this podcast is for you. We go over everything from doing and teaching yoga to scaling a small business, living a modern yoga lifestyle, and so much more. You'll find interesting, fun, raw conversations along with some tips, tricks, strategies, and insights in this podcast. So grab your cup of chai and let's jump in. Hello, Ismat. Welcome to the Let's Talk Yoga podcast.
Hello, Arundhati.
Thank you for doing this. I'm really excited to explore our conversation today about the Marma Nadi. And you've often told me it's a bridge between Ayurveda and yoga. So can we start there? How and where do yoga and Ayurveda connect?
Fantastic. So, Ayurveda and yoga is often said the sister sciences or the different sides of the same coin. In general, we have heard those understandings. But where is the actual connection? The actual connection lies in all the 5 koshas, starting from the Annamaya kosha with food, nutrition. But going beyond the food and nutrition, the connection is in the prana. So the pranamaya kosha is where Ayurveda and yoga both come together. Whether you're practicing yoga or you're doing certain aspects of Ayurveda, that's where the pranamaya kosha gets enriched. And nadis, what we will be talking about more as the subtle channels, is that connection that allows that flow of prana to unite with oneself. Or as in Ayurveda, we say that it is all about the relationship that we are in, the relationship with the nature, the relationship with food, the relationship with other people, the relationship with the environment. And that connectivity with the relationship outwards is also prana. The relationship within us is also prana, and that's where yoga comes in. So, yoga is about the unification and integration of the prana. The Ayurveda is about maintenance and balancing of the prana.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I like how you said it is the unification of prana and then the maintenance and balance of prana. So, can I
That's
ask
right.
you, what got you interested in Ayurveda? Where did your journey now? I mean, you told me this before we started recording, 30 plus years. Where
That's
did
right.
your journey begin?
My journey has been very interesting. I was initiated by a guru at the age of 16. I was just stepping into architecture program in India, and I was initiated by my guru, who was the guru in Marma Nadi. And at that time in 80s, when this wisdom was dying off, my guru decided that he wanted to initiate the younger generation to pass on this wisdom so that it can stay revived. And he initiated me, and that's when I started to understand the marmas first, where they are located in the body, how to locate them even without touching them, because there are 108 marmas that now we know exist on the human body. Like everything else, human body has also gone through evolution. So we have change in the way our structures are. We have change in the way our hair qualities are, our skin quality. Similarly, the marma points that we can now visually or through touch, we can connect 108. Different books like Yoga Siddha Samhita talks about more than 280 Marma points, but right now we can't locate so many. So that's where my journey started by my guru initiating. And then I stopped learning architecture. And my parents called me and they said, I was in Ashram for 8 years. They said, if you really find this interesting, like most of the Indian parents that come from the city, they want their kids to have a degree. And that's when my formal studies started. And actually, I did my bachelor's in Indian naturopathic and yogic sciences.
Can I ask from where?
So I did it from Pune, India. It's a small town near Mumbai city where I come from. And at that time, the naturopathic colleges were also very small. Now it has turned into Mahatma Gandhi University. But that's how the journey started. So while studying Marma Nadi, that's where I learned also Ayurveda from my guru. I also learned yoga from my guru. So that 8 years of unofficial kind of education, the Gurukul system, that's where my introduction and real learning, I would say, started there. Then I went about to do a lot of qualifications. I did my master's in integrative medicine. And then now I've got the doctorate of natural medicine in Canada. But I always say these are just certificates and degrees to be hung on the wall. Till today, I only carry the wisdom and the knowledge that I've actually learned in that 8 years with my guru.
Wonderful. It's a fascinating journey. And so, a couple of questions from what you were just talking about. Can we, for the listeners, talk about why some of these things in yoga and Ayurveda, why they are not mainstream, right? Because a lot of times teachers and students will ask, like, if I go to India, is this available all over?
Right. So, unfortunately, even in India today, what we call it as modern India or the new age India, we have lost a lot of the art and science that was part of the Vedic healthcare system in India. And this was due to historical reasons. I don't want to get into too much of the histories and the negativity around it, but definitely because of the historical reasons, we lost so much of the deep-rooted wisdoms. But Ayurveda, as we call it, is the mother of all healing. But generally, the Vedic system of health and healing has influenced a lot of other systems of medicine. And just to give you a few examples, and of course these cannot be claimed now, but when we look back and we track back, we do see that there has been influence as simple as acupuncture. It was called as Suchi Karma. And the needlings were done, of course, not with metal, but with thorn, with plants. Everything was plant based. So plant thorns were used on certain Marma points, which are also called the precursor to acupuncture points. Then there was something called Meru Chikitsa. Meru is spine. There's a mountain in India called Meru. So basically, it's the epicenter of the energy. And Meru Chikitsa is very similar to what osteopathy is practiced today. Then there's Hadwed, which was alignment and adjustments of joints, not just the vertebrae, but all the joints. And what we see today is chiropractic. So a lot of these kind of healing art, and especially the touch therapies and healing art, has been lost over the histories and over the years. And this is one of my work in last 30 years, is trying to bring back at least the understanding, not the entire practices, but at least the understanding and the connectivity of where so many of the healing arts that we see today. The World Health Organization has officially listed about 104 therapies that are now practiced in the world. And I can say roughly that out of that, at least 70 therapies have been deeply rooted in the Vedic medicine.
That's interesting. No, I asked because a lot of times, right, modern day yoga students, practitioners, they forget about colonization of India, right? And colonization for a very long time, and the effect it's had that we can see till today. So going back to the nadis, you spoke about the nadis a moment ago. Nadis are probably familiar to some listeners. If they've done a decent amount of yoga studies, people would be exposed to the nadis. But just in case someone's newer to it, can we talk about what are the nadis and why are they significant in Ayurveda?
Definitely. So we often talk about the so-called Western anatomy and physiology, and that has become a common language of a conversation. Although we do practice asanas, we do practice meditation, we do practice pranayama, but end of the day, our conversations, and even today, modern research base is all about drawing that equivalency between Western anatomy and physiology with, yoga practices. This is where Marma Nadi and also other like Agni, Dhatus, these are very, very important understanding of human body and the development of human body. That is we call it as a Vedic anatomy and physiology. So it's a metaphysical science also in a way. And nadis you can generally translate them into nervous system. So nadis are basically the nervous system of the body, but nadis are classified as two types. One is the gross nadis, which we understand as the nervous system. That is in yoga, we also know Shushumna Nadi, Ida Nadi, Pingala Nadi, which is kind of translated into autonomical nervous system, like your sympathetic and parasympathetic. So some of that we can very parallel draw. So those are the those are the gross nadis. That means that they are tangible. We understand them.
Got it.
They are present in the human bodies, that when dissected, open, you can see them, you can feel their effect. Cranial nerves, that's also nadi, that's called as the karma nadi in Nadi Vigyan or Marma Nadi. So that is basically the gross nadi. But then there comes the subtle nadis as well. These nadis, we cannot track their channels. We cannot track their pathways, but they do exist in the human body. And very often I explain this as your landline and your wireless phone system. So the communication system, you have both. You have the landline. So when you're looking into the physical nadis or the physical nerves, that's like your landline. Your bell comes in, bell services or phone services come in, they install that, and you can definitely know that this is where your phone line is. But wireless is basically, it's free. You can go like free moving, but yet you can communicate. It doesn't make you stagnant or still in one place. That's what the subtle nadis are all about. It's the wireless communication. And it is dependent on the satellites. And what is the satellites? The satellites are your chakras.
It's fascinating to me the way you laid out the gross nadis and the subtle nadis. Is the number significant? As in the number of nadis?
So number of nadis, when we are putting both the nadis together, the physical nadi that is in kind of in your physical body, but then the subtle nadis kind of expand like your koshas. They go outside of your body as well. Those nadis in total, they are considered to be 72,000 nadis in the body. And the total length of the nadi, both physical and subtle nadi, is thrice the circumference of the earth. Wow. So the length is so long. So that means we all have the potential through our nadis and through our prana, even through your yoga practices, through meditation, through asanas, we all have that potential to expand our reach because the length of the nadis is so big. And that's where telepathy, which we have lost now in today's age and time, the telepathy, the communication, you could do communication with the person just through the mind to mind, and that would be carried on. And that was through the nadis.
It's fascinating to me. So how does, before that, in yoga usually, right, we talk about Ida Nadi and Pingala Nadi and Sushumna and mostly in pranayama and Nadi Shodhana. But
that's right.
How does one activate these nadis in Ayurveda? I know we have pranayama in yoga.
Yes.
Is there something specific in Ayurveda that will help activate or maintain the health of these nadis?
Of course. So Ayurvedic principle is very, very simple. Ayurvedic principle is that if you can keep your channels and all channels, including your GI tract, if you can keep your channels free of toxins, prana can flow freely. Any obstruction which limits the flow of prana is bound to give you disease. So Ayurveda focus is keeping the channels clean all the time. And that is done through your metabolic regulation. So that means sleeping on time, eating on time, certain lifestyle that you follow, which you said that you had few talks on those as well, the lifestyle, the dinacharya, the daily routine, the self-care. That is all the primary care that you can give yourself to keep the channels flowing. Now, through asanas, you do the same. You do stretching, because any stretching of any channels helps in moving the toxins. If they are sitting in your body, it helps in moving the toxins to the orifices, to the opening, like to your having a regular bowel movement, having a proper urination. So even the stretchings do the same. But what Ayurveda says is stop putting those toxins in your body, so the work that you do through yoga can expand beyond cleaning all the time, because it's a waste of your energy as well if you have to keep on cleaning all the time. And one of the analogies I use is if you have a little kid at home and if you're not teaching the child to clean up after themselves, all you're going to do is clean up and get yourself tired. So that's what we see in yoga. We do so much of asanas and we are actually exhausting ourselves because we are not taking care of our primary needs. And that's where Ayurveda comes in.
So true. I know we're not talking about the doshas in this conversation, at least very directly, but I'm guessing if someone is doing like a lot of excessive heating, hot yoga type of asana, and they are, pitta dominant, and then I'm guessing it becomes worse. Am I assuming correctly?
That's right. So the moment I use the word toxins or am is also accumulation of dosha in the body. So if someone is pitta dosha in their constitution, or they already have a pre-existing pitta imbalance, it could be as simple as a skin rash or whatever that might be. And then they are doing hot yoga for a prolonged time, it will increase the pitta further. Now, this increased pitta poses as toxins to the body. So if you're increasing if you're increasing any dosha, it has to be eliminated. Then you must work on elimination of it.
To me, it's fascinating how Ayurveda and yoga, they're always meant to be paired together. And in modern day, we've separated them so much. And hence there's a lot of confusion and lack of clarity. But can we talk about you mentioned more than a few times about Marma. For the listeners, can we clarify what is Marma?
Absolutely. So marmas, there's a lot of descriptions about these marmas. So marma points in the body are basically, as I said, they're precursor to acupuncture point. That means their energy centers, right? And once tap into these energy centers, it basically opens your potential and also the bioavailability. So the air that you're breathing even through your skin, the food that you're taking through your, skin, all of that, even the conversation that you're having face to face with the person, you are consuming energy and you're kind of giving energy. All of that exchange happens through the marmas, exactly like your nostrils. So that is the function of a marma point. But marma point, where they are placed, the location of the marma point are also intersection of the mind, body, spirit. This is where the mind, body, spirit unites. So if a marma point is getting activated or stimulated, and that yoga is fabulous for that. Yoga practices were meant to keep these marma points activated and stimulated at all times. So one asana, any simple asana that you're doing, even like something like Vajra asana, any simple asana that you're doing, it opens up more than 20 marma points at one given time, which is not possible with any hands-on therapy. How much can a therapist do that for
Correct.
you? Right? So you are doing that for yourself. So it is opening up, activating that dialogue between your own mind, body, and spirit. So that is the subtle understanding of marma. The physiological understanding of the marma is that this is again a point where your 7 tissues unite. That is your lymphatics, your blood tissues, your muscle tissues, your fat tissues, your bone tissues, your bone marrow tissues, and your reproductive tissue. That means any nourishment that needs to be exchanged in these tissues happens around these marma points. So you can understand how profound yoga practices are, as simple as asanas, whether you're aware of it or you're not aware of it. You are activating these marma points that are taking care of all these exchanges in the body for you.
It is truly fascinating. Would you be able, you said Vajrasana, and in English sometimes referred to as thunderbolt pose for the listeners. But can you give us a few more asana examples? I think it might help to relate to it a little more.
Okay, so in Ayurveda, we look into yoga postures in again 3 categories of Vata, Pitta, Kapha.
Okay.
Any Kapha balancing asanas are all the standing poses. All the Pitta balancing are the lying poses. All the Pitta balancing are sitting poses and all the Vata balancing are lying poses. So Shavasana is something that you just lie straight. And here there is a circulation. Here you're creating the 5 levels of prana. I'm sure a lot of yoga teachers have studied this in their programs as well. The 5 levels of prana. And depending on each posture or each asana, different levels of prana also gets activated. So Shivasana is balancing the samana prana. That means bringing the energy from the peripheral to the center. And the Vyana, which means moving the energy from the center to the periphery.
Out to the periphery.
That's right. So that's where Shavasana kind of is balancing. Now, asana like Shavasana, there are 3 postures that we look into in Marma and yoga work are the ones that directly work on the chakras without getting into the Marma points. And Shavasana is one of them. Padmasana is the second one. And again, coming to Vajrasana. So these are the 3 postures because these 3 postures are also used in meditation a lot. So they go directly into the chakras, and these chakras then kind of, through the flow of the prana, they are actually stimulating the marma. So rather than the marmas coming into the chakras reach out to the marma. So I know it's a very subtle science, but that's the understanding. So these three postures are very, very important to reach to your chakra system. But if we are looking into something like, say, the cobra pose or the bhujasana,
Bhujangasana.
exactly, that is a very, very powerful posture. So in this posture, again, you'll see that there's little bit of twisting, there's a little bit of balancing, there's a lot of work of the shoulders involved as well as of the hips involved. Now, just under our shoulder joint, there are about 5 key marma points on each side. These marma points do get activated, and one of the marma right in there is called as lohit taksha. Lohit means iron, and this helps in building the iron of the body.
Okay.
So even if you're vegetarian and you think that you are deficient in iron, these asanas help you with the nutrition also, the distribution of the nutrients. You could be consuming only a little bit of food, but the distribution of your nutrients are amazing because what the marmas do for you while you're doing the asanas. So that's one marma right in there is the lohit taksha. Then in the hip also there's lohit taksha marma in the front, but at the back there is very, very important marma, which is called as the katika taruna marma. And this actually helps in strengthening all your organs that are at the bottom. That is like your bladder. For women, it's uterus. For males, it's prostate. So it also looks into the anatomical balance. As we age, especially for women, as we age, our bladder loses its toning. And certain asanas like this, and through the marma stimulation, it helps in not just the muscles, but it also helps in retaining the energy, the strength, the life of that organ.
It's truly fascinating to me. So you mentioned how there are these marma points on the body.
That's
so
right.
If someone wants to improve their health through marma chikitsa, is there a version that they can like DIY, like do it yourself? Or do they go to an Ayurvedic doctor, a practitioner? So how do we essentially get marma chikitsa is what I'm asking you.
So for preventative care, if you're just looking into preventing, say you have a family history of arthritis and you want to prevent that, then you do it yourself. You just have to learn it, how to do it, and you can do it by yourself. But if there's any correction needed, a particular treatment, now you already have arthritis and you have degeneration going on and you're in excruciating pain, that's when you seek help from a practitioner.
Okay.
So as a corrective, something like a physiotherapy, as a corrective therapy, you can definitely go to an Ayurvedic practitioner. There are many ways marma is used. There are many techniques and therapies. And if you go to one practitioner over the other, they might have a different style of doing the marma chikitsa or marma therapy. And that is again based on whether they are using certain elements, like if you're using earth element, lot of lepam or paste or herbal paste is applied on the marma points. If they're using more of fire element, lot of heat therapy is done. There's also one therapy called Agni Karma in Ayurvedic medicine, where heat is applied on the marma points. Something like moxibustion in Chinese medicine.
Okay.
So those are also different techniques. So there are different techniques. And for listeners, I would say that wherever you are locally, you can find out your practitioners and ask them what kind of technique are you using on the marmas, just to get a clarity and to be a little bit more prepared.
So I like how you said for preventative care, right? That's your daily maintenance. There are things you can do on your own. And if you have something corrective that needs to be done, then you go to more of someone who's established in this. So
that's right.
What are some of the common issues that someone would go to marma chikitsa for?
So marma chikitsa, a person can go for physical health, like as I said, something like physical therapy. Whether you would be seeking a chiropractic or osteopathic treatment, instead of that, you can go for marma therapy to get your back aligned or to get your mobility back, or if you had any kind of injury or sports injury. So that is one reason why people seek Marma therapy, especially in North America or in Europe. That's why people seek Marma therapy. But there's also very potent use of Marma. It's because Marmas, as I explained, that they are the intersection of mind, body, spirit. Marmas are also, Marma therapy is extremely, extremely good for mental health as well. So, in cases of having intense anxiety or having mentally low energy, Marma points are very good. And that's where subtle techniques are used. Even sometimes energy healing is done as well on Marma points if there is cases of traumas or, there's some emotion that is stuck, some experience the person might have had in life, which is really now kind of interfering in their day-to-day performance. So for that also, Marma therapy is extraordinary. It is a combination of energy healing and physical therapy.
Got it. So I'm also guessing for these things, like initially, because the doshas are such a dominant part of our being, that the type of therapy you get will be, is it dosha dependent?
It's not dosha dependent, it is prana dependent. So it's a neutral factor that is taken is prana. Because prana also balances the doshas. Now, if you want to get a little bit into the doshas, there are three doshas, vata, pitta, kapha. And vata is always called as the devil dosha. Because when dosha comes out, vata dosha comes out of balance, it throws the other two doshas off easily. And in understanding, the prana and the vata, they cannot reside together. If vata increases, the prana will decrease. If prana decreases, vata increases. So the whole understanding is to keep the potency of the prana high and the prana flowing. The doshas will automatically come into balance. Because vata comes into balance, the other two will easily come into balance.
Got it. I was thinking that depending on, at least my limited understanding of Ayurveda, was a lot of things are dependent on your dosha. So I was wondering if that's applicable here.
Yeah, if you're looking into food, if you have to do any matching of herbs, or you have to do any matching of food or matching of lifestyle, that's where the compatibility comes in. So to get that compatibility right, yes, definitely doshas are taken very seriously into consideration. But Marma Nadi, as I said, it's a bridge between yoga and Ayurveda. It's not 100% Ayurveda and it's not 100% yoga. It just bridges both of them. So it's a very neutral approach.
And to me, it's fascinating because I approach this topic with a very Ayurveda dosha type of mindset. So it's been really insightful. So if someone listening is now really curious about understanding more about Marma Nadi and Marma Chikitsa, and especially even things like the asanas you mentioned and the points in the body, do you have any advice for the listeners if they want to go learn, or not even learn, understand more of this? Do you have any resources that you could connect them to?
There are few books out there. Dr. Lad, who's one of the most respected Ayurvedic physician here in North America, he has come up with a book. So that's the first thing that I would recommend listeners if you want to explore into the books. And marmas are something that you cannot do self-learning. You do need a guide. If not a guru, you definitely need a guide. There are very few people outside of India, I would say, whether it be North America, whether it be Europe, outside of India, that actually teach this form of art and healing science. There's my very good friend in US, Dr. Shaker. He teaches, I'm teaching here in Canada. Many of the programs are online as well. And if not, then just attend webinars for now, free webinars wherever you see. You can connect to our institute as well in Canada. We do a lot of educational free webinars. And then when you feel time is right for you to learn, you can definitely embark on that journey of, learning as well. But this is such a kind of a very limited right now, this aspect of Marma Nadi, because there aren't too many teachers out there.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because we've had this conversation on the podcast it's come up a few times that at least in the yoga world, I always say you have to verify your sources. Make sure you are learning from credible teachers, because this is just not information. This is knowledge. It is wisdom.
That's right.
It's a spiritual practice in many ways, right? So, and that's why verifying your source is very important. And I'm glad you mentioned Dr. Vasant Lad and Dr. Shekhar and your own institute. I'll make sure to link to all of these in the show notes. But I just wanted to say, this has been such a fascinating conversation. I have learned so much about just Marma Chikitsa, and I hope that the listeners will pay more attention to this and will slowly make their way to you. And as we wrap up, can you tell us where everyone can connect with you, whether it's Instagram, your website, your institute? Where can people find you?
You can find us on Instagram, Facebook. So the institute that I founded in Canada in 2002, and that was exactly for the same reason. When I moved from Europe, I found there was nothing here in North America, and just to establish something for people here that can have some easy accessibility, Center for Ayurveda and Indian Systems of Healing was founded. It is easier to get through the institute kind of social media or website rather than my personal, because I hardly check them. But we have a beautiful team that can definitely communicate your messages to me. Wonderful. And you can post that possibly for the listeners as well. So it's CAISH Ayurveda. That's what you'll find on Facebook. We also have Facebook groups where we nurture our kind of participants, educate them. Our whole motive is education. Education of users, education of, practitioners. So we try to educate you as much as you can, because the intention is to make you independent in your journey of health and healing.
Wonderful. I will link to it, and I will make sure that everybody gets access to it through the show notes. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you will come back to have more such conversations. Thank you.
Definitely. Would love to. Thank you, Arundhati.
Thank you for listening. All the resources can be found at letstalk.yoga/listen. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please remember to leave us a review. It only takes a minute of your time, but it makes a big difference and allows me to continue giving you free content like this via this podcast. I will see you next week. Until then, enjoy your practice, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.